Now let's move on to a slightly contrarian, shall we say, perspective on Nigeria. On paper, Nigeria is an investor's dream. You've got huge tracts of arable land, strong and growing demand for processed agricultural goods, a fast-growing population and all the demand that entails, and many others. But the reality for many investors is very different, with the current exchange rate policy being one huge turnoff. And that's just one factor. Billions of dollars of loans from the African Development Bank, the World Bank as well, as we just mentioned in that link, have been withheld since late January because Nigeria had not submitted an economic recovery plan. As Aly Khan Satchu, CEO at Rich Management, put it to me earlier, without a comprehensive plan and a flexible exchange rate, Nigeria is a place to avoid right now.
I would like to invest it a few weeks before the decision was made to normalize the FX rate. I might consider it in that environment. But, at the moment, no. I think, we're in a new landscape in Africa. We've got to look after our money. We can't take these, big bets depending upon politicians seeing an epiphany. The lesson is, from what I can see from the politicians, is there is no moment of epiphany anytime soon from any of them.
Right. Isn't it ironic, though, that we're sitting here and we're talking about political risk, and yet you run to South Africa, you've got these disputes between the president and the finance minister. You go to Nigeria, obviously there's a whole issue of whether or not President Buhari is actually ill or not, and then the policy issues around that. Over in Kenya, we've got an election coming, so policy clearly out of the window until the end of August. The only island of political stability, relative to all the others, seems to be Egypt.
Interesting point.
Relatively speaking,
well,
it is.
yes, because I think he's made the right economic decision. It took him time to make it, but he's made it. He's bitten the bullet. When you enter the Egyptian market now, you're getting a fair value for your dollar. That's really key if you're an investor. And I think seems to me geopolitically as well, he's far better positioned. He seems to have been the first African leader to talk with Trump. He seems to be on Trump's inside tracks. I think when I take all those things into the mix, Egypt looks, for now, more stable than the others. Medium-term horizon and long-term horizon are different issues completely.
Yeah, right. We'll get back to the whole $10,000, where would you put it, argument in just a bit. But let's jump back into Nigeria briefly. Oil prices, because it would seem that one of the calculations being made by the CBN and in Asarok in Abuja is that let's hold out and let oil prices recover. But then again, you turn into the EIA and you look at their data. I mean, oil production in the US is coming back. They've gone up by about 200,000 barrels a day of output between November and January. It seems to be filling in part of that hole that we're getting from OPEC and Russia cutting capacity. So that oil bet might actually go sideways, might it?
Correct. That's what I believe. I think actually we're very close to the highs for oil for this year. I think market is the longest positioned. It means everybody has got oil. Where are the new buyers going to come from? A lot is betting on that OPEC is going to keep its discipline. I can't remember when OPEC kept its discipline last. And just like the way you're describing Nigerian policymakers, there are policymakers from Venezuela to Angola to you name it, all hoping for the same thing. I don't think they're going to get it. I think the oil price starts to come off the boil. And then we get the second round of this commodity price crash. I don't think we'll go necessarily down to the lows below $30, but I think I can foresee us softening up to 45, 40. What happens then? All these decisions that they kick the can down the road are going to come back and are going to come back much harder. And this time they won't be able to kick the can down the road. And I think those are the types of risks that these policymakers are running by doing nothing, not being ahead of the curve, not thinking that there is a worse outcome that can come their way.
Would you take a short position on the Naira and Brent crude?
So I'd take a short position on the Naira, of course, at the official rate. I'd sell them as much as I could possibly sell them and as much as they could afford. That is a Soros-type trade with the Bank of England. The move is coming, and they can't stop it. They're like King Canute. It's just a question of time and whether you've got the firepower, because people have been doing that with the Chinese currency, and then what the Chinese do is stick up the rate that you have to borrow the currency at, and they bed that speculation down. Sorry, where were we?
Brent crude. Would you short oil?
Yes. With the Brent crude with a stop at 60.
Yeah.
And we're about 56, I think. I would be shorting it, yes. And
all right.
I think that's a big short, actually.